Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. We have made it through one round of the season, or one if you count opening round, and guess what we have to show for it? We have 2 whole games of football to talk about. Wow, don't spend them all at once. I'm Jesse, that's Liam. Liam, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Jesse. I'm doing all right. I could have done with a bit more footy on my weekend, but that's okay. I planned for a big old weekend of footy watching, and guess what I got? 2 games of footy. That was it. But that's okay. We got cyclones be more important and safety be more important for the people. But I'm doing okay, Jesse. How about you, good sir?
I'm good. I consumed both of my games. I didn't really feel great about the fact that one of my 2 games for the round was at 12:20 on a Sunday. I just felt like that's the worst.
Oh, it's going to get worse, mate. It's going to get worse.
Well, that's a preview for Just the Tips, which if you aren't subscribed to us on YouTube and you are a Spotifyer only, please make sure you're jumping on to YouTube as well for our Just the Tips round by round preview edition. We talk cats, crows, confidence points, lots of good stuff over there. Anything else we need to plug, Liam? I think that pretty much covers us at CMPerfect_AFL.
That's what I was going to say. We need the @CMPerfect_AFL to go in there as well so people know where to find us. That's everywhere. You can find us all over the place. And if you're on YouTube and you're like, why are there 4 CM Perfects? Well, you see our logo, that's the one you got to click on. Don't worry about those other vlogs. We are the 1 centimetre perfect for you, my friends. That being said, Jesse, go on. You go.
I would say you're stirring up drama with other content creators, but I don't think either of them have been active since about the time that Jack Dyer was running out for Richmond. So I think we'll be okay.
I think we'll be okay. I think one is it has one video that's like a self-help from like 5 years ago. And the other one's fine. It uploads like local footy games and stuff, which I guess is pretty neat. But that's been a while too. Different stuff. We're the only one that spells it correctly, I'm pretty sure. But Jesse, let's move on into let's get straight into it. We've got a little bit to cover today. Obviously, pretty light on the games recaps, which is fine. But a couple of news stories breaking even during the week. Let's start with the audit, the scary audit that's got the AFL world rocked and shattered. Everyone's talking about the audit, Jesse. What is going on?
Well, it's probably the only time the auditors have taken centre stage in anything, and I'm sure they're loving the spotlight. So this story was broken by Carolyn Wilson on Channel 7, I believe she's at now, last night, that the AFL is taking interest in third-party player payments to Geelong Football Club players and will be conducting an audit on the club. Now, that sentence sounds quite ominous, and it probably brings back shades of early 2000s Carlton. It probably evokes for some people talk of the Essendon supplement scandal back in 2013. You know, what are they going to find if they look? But it's a bit of a sensationalism. So every club is audited periodically by the AFL. This year it's Geelong and Port Adelaide's turn. There is reports that other clubs are quite suspicious of Geelong's ability to recruit. To that, I would say if every club, and this is going to be an allegedly, as just advised by the Centimetre Perfect legal team, allegedly, if every club could get away with it, the temptation would certainly be there. Geelong have more to offer, I think, than a lot of Victorian clubs do for a certain lifestyle of player. And that, I think, doesn't quite get appreciated by certain pockets of fan bases. And by pockets, I mean the ones within about a 10-kilometre radius of the Melbourne CBD. Because, quite frankly, Seddon is not exactly beachside living for those who want to play for Western Bulldogs. Box Hill doesn't have rolling acreage of farms, if that's your thing. If you were going to play for Hawthorn, Geelong does have a distinct point of difference. Now, we don't know what the audit's going to uncover. It may uncover some wrongdoing by the Geelong Football Club. We don't know. But I think it's important to stress that there's always been a narrative around Geelong. I feel an unfair narrative, and Carolyn Wilson did say the same on her program last night as well. But I just get the sense, Liam, that if it was any other club but Geelong, if it was, say, Gold Coast and Adelaide, let's throw them out, would this even be a story?
No, I don't think it would. I think Geelong's always had a bit of a microscope on them from opposing fans because of how good they manage their list. That being said, assuming that all is above board when their audit comes to the fore. If things aren't like above board, then we're going to be asking like, okay, well, that's how they do it. But the list management and how they manage stuff over there is pretty decent. And you would like to think that this audit's going to be a huge non-news story. Like it's got, routine. But yeah, if it was Freo or Adelaide, if anything, you'd want those teams to be doing it more because no one cares. You guys do that. That's fine. No one's going to check. No one's going to check. Maybe Gold Coast should start doing it. Maybe they can see some success. Who knows?
How did Chad Warner end up with 8 Cappuccino Strip real estate blocks? Suspiciously inherited from his now discovered recently deceased Italian great uncle. We may never know.
We won't know.
Can I, before we move on from this though, this whole thing kind of grates me. Generally, not Geelong specifically.
Okay.
This third party player payment dilemma we get in, and there's 2 lines you can take. I think there's the line of, well, nothing at all whatsoever under no circumstances, which I understand why people feel that way. But one of Geelong's major sponsors, and I'm going to use Geelong again because they are a key example, but most clubs have other affiliations of relevance. One of Geelong's major sponsors is Deakin University. So if a player genuinely, and we're going to assume all players are going to engage in this in good faith, if a player actually wants to go and educate themselves in the case of Deakin, or if they have interest in pursuing like a financial career after football and working in banking or anything really, is it really that much of an issue if they're studying part-time, they're working part-time, so long as it's declared? I fail to see how this is as big of a problem as people really get up in arms about, and people get really cross about this. Like, Adam Simpson owns Hungry Jacks's. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. I guess, obviously, if people want to go study, I reckon that's not the biggest crux. I think it's the farms and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, Jesse. This is like when you're talking to your uncle at the family dinner who thinks he's political and says stuff without actually knowing. That's me right now. That could be like all like the farm stuff and all the old mate. Flip, is it Brad or Chris? Get the counter up. I'm going to say Risk.
You know what? I'll wipe your number off for that alone because you actually got it right in, and well done. But we do need to talk about Brad Scott later. But continue.
So Chris Scott obviously being the head of a financial company, right? That is affiliated with Geelong. Like there's a whole bunch of other stuff that.
Well, he's not the head. He's in a management advocacy role. I walked through Fairmount the other week, and there was literally, I could not go 10 metres down the Cappuccino Strip that Chad Warner now suspiciously owns the entirety of, without seeing advertisements for Fremantle coach Justin Longmuir appearing at a leadership conference. I think that's not dissimilar to the point where, well, if we're getting that upset about these things, I think we all need to take a breath.
Time out. I need to know more about this Chad Warner owning half the Cappuccino Strip story. I haven't heard of this.
It's a halfback to the joke I made about how Chad Warner suspiciously inherits half the Cappuccino Strip as a kickback.
Gotcha. Okay,
I
thought it was like an actual thing. I was like,
no.
Chat to Freo confirmed. Let's run it now, Jesse. The scoop here on the Cinnamon Perfect podcast. Chad Warner coming to Fremantle Dockers, allegedly. Hashtag. No, I think at the moment, Jesse, do you know what I think it is? I think it's a bit of a slow news cycle with the AFL at the moment. And this feels like a really good thing to talk about because they got to have something, right? So what's more exciting than an audit? We will find out, I'm sure. Shall we move on, Jesse? Should we move on to the next topic?
Let's very quickly mention that Brad Scott is going to receive a 1-year contract extension at Essendon, taking him through to 2027. I think good news for the Bombers. You want an experienced coach while you're heading into this rebuild, so I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Very good. Very good indeed. It's interesting though. Another team that's kind of on the teeter. Do you reckon too early? They've gone too early on that one? Obviously not. You just said it's a good thing.
I get the sense there's concern about the depth of coaching talent in the sport at the moment is my general feel.
Fair enough. May as well lock in the experience while you can. Absolutely. All right, Jesse, let's move on to a news story that came out, and I believe you know a little bit about, which is the absurd ticket pricing. I believe that the Kangaroos are chucking on some of their members. What's going on?
So this came from the Carlton subreddit on Reddit, where all good journalists
Of
accrue
course.
their news nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, bit of an odd one. This. So Carlton are playing North Melbourne away in the Good Friday game this year, which is a big game for North Melbourne. That it probably is their marquee season game, much like Anzac Day is for Collingwood and Essendon, much like the Len Hall game often is for Fremantle. It's very much a big occasion for North Melbourne. Now, what we're seeing as a result of North having this marquee game against Carlton, who are a very big club in Victoria, is prices of about $380 for 4 tickets to this game. If the Carlton supporters were to use their members' privilege or equivalent, I'm not exactly sure how it works in Victoria with so many clubs there, but I believe there's some form of access, depending on the package level, to away games for Victorian-based supporters of Victorian clubs. So quite the cost, Liam. Almost $100 a ticket to watch Carlton versus North Melbourne. Is this all going a bit too far?
Well, I believe when I was reading that same, because you sent it to me via the grams, and I was reading over it, and the person was giving a breakdown of what they normally pay per game for a family of 4, and for the most part, kind of reasonable. Like, obviously, like Melbourne has so many teams that getting attendance to games is often difficult, but just because of how saturated that market is. So for the most part, fair pricing, fair go watch your team play away games. That's quite the jump. It's quite the hike on Good Friday of all days. It's quite a massive increase for a family of 4. Now, I say this a lot, Jesse. I'm always talking about, like, well, it's business, isn't it? It's almost like a catchphrase that I throw out at you when we're talking about all sorts of stuff to do with money and KO and all that kind of stuff. It's business, isn't it? If you don't want to go to the game, don't pay the money, because that is probably the best way of telling them, hey, you're charging too much for your shit. Cut it out. Because if there's going to be a Good Friday game, now it's one of those questions as well. Is it a game that's going to have that much pull that people are going to go and pay that money regardless? I would argue maybe not. Like, it's an important game, sure. It's a Good Friday game. Everyone's got the day off. But a lot of people have a lot of family commitments. You need to make that game, affordable. You need to make that game, give it some appetite for people to want to come. And if you're throwing $400 for a family of 4 out there, you're going to have a pretty empty stadium, I would have thought. Especially for, and this is not a knock against the Kangas, but it's the Kangas at the moment. Like, it's a fun, exciting team on the rebuild, but are you going to pay $400 to go see that? Probably not. Probably not.
I mean, to put that into perspective, that's almost the cost of my season ticket to go to Fremantle.
Yeah.
So I get to go to 11 games of middling quality. These guys only get to go to 1. That doesn't seem very fair.
I don't think it's fair at all. Now,
and they're Carlton supporters. That's even worse.
Now, have we confirmed this to actually true, or are we just talking?
No, we're just wildly speculating. But I think it's worth bringing into the broader conversation, though, isn't it? Because
why would someone go on Reddit and say that for no reason? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, actually, it's Reddit.
It is on the Carlton subreddit, to be fair. Like, I'd like to operate in good faith and assume that there's not that many desperates trawling the Carlton subreddit for attention. But what I will say is this: we know that West Coast's GA ticket prices are often no lower than $80. So this isn't inconceivable, regardless. But I think this is quite interesting because KO is now $40 a month for the. This is actually another point off topic. I tried to sign up for KO. I thought there was a cheaper KO than the one that was $40 a month, right? I tried to do it through the app. For whatever reason, I couldn't find. It just would not let me go to the cheap one, so I just cracked it and just did the $40 one. So they won, but I could have sworn there was one that you only had one stream for. It was like $25 or $28 a month or something, but there was no way to access it via like resubscribe through the app, which was infuriating. I was doing this 20 minutes before the season started because I'm like, well, not giving them a cent more than I need to.
Sure.
And I couldn't get through.
There we go. But you got there eventually, Jesse. All you have to do
I
is
did.
pay top dollar, top dollar for the privilege. Yeah, look, I think it's it'll be interesting to see, like, because I mean, who would ever talk rubbish on Reddit for upvotes that mean absolutely nothing? I'm sure no one would ever do that. No way.
No.
But it
Don't
seems
look in
like
the
a
Fremantle. Don't look in the Fremantle subreddit. Just say
no.
the words Nat. Just say the words Nat Fife and God, and just off you go.
I have 20,000 upvotes today. Hooray! Hooray! But look, people do obviously rage about on Reddit quite a bit, but that seems like a weird one to just jump on and go for. But yeah, if that is the case,
Let's assume it is.
let's assume it is. Sort your shit out, Kangas. That's not very nice of you. And watch it sell out now and make us both look like absolute buffoons. Money. It's all about the
Hey,
money.
hey, Liam. Speaking
Hey,
of
Jesse.
also things that are about the money, guess what's here to stay forever and is never going away and ever dying ever under any circumstances? Can you guess what that would be?
Opening round.
Oh, well done, Liam. You're so clever.
Yeah. Can I take one off my mistake counter for that?
No.
Okay.
It's not.
Fair enough.
If you make a mistake on the field, mate, you don't get it. Otherwise, Tom Sheridan would have been desperately kicking 15-meter chip passes in the back 50 for the next 8 years of his life to try to rectify 2015. Haven't forgotten, Tom. Never will.
Still catching strays.
We should make a Tom Sheridan award for Howler of the season. I think this year if we see one.
Sure.
Anyway, so Laura Kane has confirmed today to Channel 7 that opening round is here to stay for the long term. This is despite a poll released last week by SEN that 93% of AFL fans are against opening round. And to be clear, I voted in this poll and I voted against because I hate opening round. It's ridiculous.
It is.
But is that not bizarre to you? Let's be reasonable and equivocate here. The justification that Kane gave was that it's meeting its growth objectives for the AFL. Which is it? Because we had money. But was it demonstrably successful? I mean, neither game sold out.
No, neither game sold out. Obviously, two were cancelled because of weather. But outside of that, I think it's kind of just generally kind of unfair, like how teams get that head start on other teams. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense at all. And actually, I don't often find myself agreeing with Matthew Lloyd all that often, or listening to him. Easy for me to say, going, yes, Lloydie, that's good words you said. Well done. But it was a good idea. Why not? Why just spread it across the whole country? Give every state their own little opening round so that it's even across the field. You keep it. Maybe have two teams in Melbourne so that Melbourne has a game. But you can still do that expansion out to the different parts of the country, still have everybody playing, still achieve that goal. Why does it have to be 4 games? Why does it have to be just the Sydney? And I get the whole rugby thing, but is there actually anyone who watches AFL who's giving 2 hoots what the NRL is doing? If the NRL is going to Vegas, none of us give a shit. None of us care. So I would love to know what those KPIs are. Because last year, fair enough, they were able to boast about really high attendance numbers. This year, they could not. There was not the same hunger for it, the same appetite. Now, could that be because of the teams that were playing? Well, that said, Sydney Hawthorn was great. GWS versus Collingwood never draws that. GWS never draw that big of a crowd, and Collingwood fans, I get the feeling they're a little bit more tepid on their team this year. So they might not make the journey up to Sydney for that game. What's this KPI? What KPI are we working for here? It's not working for the fans. It's not working for half the teams, more than half the teams. What purpose is this serving?
Okay, I'm gonna pitch you something. You tell me yes or no. So It's pretty clear the AFL is desperate to gain a foothold in Queensland and New South Wales while the NRL's out of town. So that I would counter with, well, if you're better than the NRL, just go and prove it. But regardless, let's let them keep that. So there's still 4 games in opening round. Brisbane host, Gold Coast host, Sydney host, GWS host. You don't have to change that. That's fine. Sure. Keep those 4. Mm-hmm. North play one of their Bunbury games. That gets us to 5. Hawthorn play one of their Tasmania games. That gets us to 6. 1 game in SA, 2 in Victoria. You start with Carlton Richmond, you work through. Tell me why that doesn't work.
Well, what about us over in the West? We get nothing?
We'll probably end up playing away. North Bunbury, so there's something. It's not perfect, but it's something.
And it's not probably North Eagles down there as well, because you have to keep or North Frere. Yeah, look, I mean that makes more sense to me, because then everyone's getting a run. There's no team going in match fit going into round 2, although if you're looking at Collingwood, maybe not such a big problem. But you see like that there's a disconnect. I like that idea, Jesse. I mean, it's not too dissimilar to what Lloydie was saying. Have it more equitable across the competition. People in Sydney, people in Brisbane are not going to watch the other games. But that doesn't matter. Still play them, because there's people in the rest of the country who also want to watch football and might give a care.
It's also worth pointing out that, assuming Gold Coast Essendon went ahead, no one would be able to watch it on telly if they didn't have KO anyway, because they don't showing Saturday night games on free to wear. So
right.
Again, you're locking out one of your key target markets anyway.
It's very strange. There must be bigger things at play. I mean, obviously SEN is not the AFL. If the AFL had done the poll and had got 94%, guess what? We'd still have opening round next year. It doesn't matter. Polls are fun. Polls are nice. But this kind of does go to, and obviously polls are it's a relatively small sample size.
Really welcoming people too.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, we heard you. We understand. We're empathetic. We're sympathetic. We don't care. Sorry. That's kind of how it seems. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the I'm sure it'll all come out in the wash. It's all to do with revenue, I'm sure. I can't see anything else. Maybe growing and spiking the audience in Queensland and Sydney. But is that just a 1 week spike and then it goes back to, well, the Rabbitohs back in town, so got to go watch them instead. Thanks for the footy last week, though. We had nothing else going on, so thanks for having the Swans on. Thanks for putting the Giants on for us. But you know what? Rabbitohs are back. You know, that's the only team I can think of. The Dragons. I'm going to go to Illawarra, watch the Dragons. The Eels, Parramatta. Penrith.
What about West Tigers? Isn't that where West Sydney play, or is that different?
No, I think West Tigers is like Leichhardt, I think. Like it's like the western suburbs of Sydney.
The only thing I have to say on this is simply Queenslander. The last thing to touch on before we get into the games, Gold Coast versus Essendon will move to after the season's finished. Oh, no. Oh, that's so weird. It's going to be round 24B.
Just make it round 25. Round 0, round 25, call it a day. Now, this is a very strange decision. There are definitely other places in the season you could slot this. It kind of, if I was a Suns fan or a Bombers fan, I would be taking this as a bit of a slap in the face for a number of reasons. But the primary one is, say that both these teams are, come September, battling for finals. You have now just taken away that week gap that everyone else gets to rest and prepare for those finals, which could be a blessing, could be a curse in hindsight. You're keeping that match fitness running, but it's an extra chance to get injured right before the finals. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is basically looks like the AFL is saying, we don't think you two are going to get anywhere close to it. Don't even worry. It's going to be a little exhibition match that we'll put on between the finals. We'll pump it up. It'll be great. We'll give you some streamers, some confetti. You can go out there, run around, kick your little footy, and away you go. But if these two teams somehow pull out a banner season, what are the implications of that?
I agree. And to be clear, I probably agree with the AFL. I don't think either of those teams are going to be in the finals picture. But we don't know that.
Correct.
And it feels very lazy from the AFL to say, problem, what's the solution? Back of the line. Like, quite literally, get to the back of the line. Which, look, it may have no bearing on the season in terms of who plays finals, but it's an issue. Like, if you're playing them in round 24 as well, even a 5-day break, both sides are going to have to play on the Thursday and the Friday night and then back up on the Wednesday.
Yeah.
For that to work. And that assumes they have to play the Thursday night game and the Friday night game. That has to happen if you want that game to be played on the Wednesday. If you don't do that, then you're looking at a Thursday game, and you may as well just do it on the Saturday night in the bye round at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Because is there a round where there's every team having a bye? Or are you talking about that one after the season's done? That's
the pre-finals bye. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just had a quick look to see if they actually both shared the bye during the season. They do not, which is probably why they were just like,
but just move shit around. Guys, you have complete control here.
Yeah.
So Essendon play Carlton in round 24. And Gold Coast play Port Adelaide. Keep in mind that the Port Adelaide Gold Coast game is in Adelaide, and Gold Coast will then have to go back home on a 5 or 6 day break and play again against Essendon. Essendon will also have to travel by virtue of playing at home against Carlton. It just seems so unnecessary. And look, I'm never going to get too up in arms about Victorian clubs having to travel, but this is just such a lazy solution to the problem that, in the AFL's fairness, they had no way of foreseeing or controlling, and they did the right thing in that regard. But doing half the job isn't doing the job. No one is going to kick and scream too much about buys being tweaked because of a natural disaster in 4 months' time. Whereas this just seems to be the solution that everyone dislikes.
Yeah, it's an odd one. But hey, maybe they'll change it, Jesse. Maybe come the end of the year, okay, fair enough. That's enough of that then. They won't change it. It's round 25, round 24B. We'll see how it goes once we get to that part of the season. I was going to bring up a point, but you know what, Jesse? I forgot it. So we'll move back on. Should we talk about the 2 games that actually happened?
I think we should.
On this momentous, gargantuan opening round that we had of 2 full games. Let's start with Friday night footy. At the SCG, we had the Sydney Swans 11-10-76, defeated by the Hawks 14-12-96. Jesse, please cue the ceremonial dance. Fun. Hawthorn win. Fun. Hawthorn win. We're on wow. We'll start that again.
That wasn't even words, man.
We're on it early this year. What a game. What a great start for the Hawks. What we want to see. Jesse, what are your thoughts about this one?
Well, I think Marlo wanted to join in the fun Hawthorn win there. He just went absolutely off his chops. What I can only assume was the postman.
And just so everyone knows, Milo is Jesse's dog.
He's not a can of that sweet chocolatey.
Yeah,
I don't even know what you powder. I don't know.
It's malty. It's a malty powder. It's malt.
Don't talk about malties on this podcast. No, look. I have a couple of thoughts here about this game more broadly. One, I think Hawthorn ticked a lot of boxes in this game, and probably more so than I had penciled them in for. I know I put them as my 2 confidence point team coming into this game, but I think they also really did show a lot of that extra impetus and that extra quality, I think, at times in this game that they probably didn't show at times last year. So let's start with the good in that regard. Lloyd Meek had an excellent game.
Amazing.
Sicily was very good. Tom Barras really did slot into that side. I thought Joe Newcombe was very good from limited disposals as well. Marbia Chol, I know he doesn't hit the scoreboard in the traditional sense, but gee, he creates problems.
He's a strange old player, Marbia, because he's one of those ones where he looks like he's not even trying half the time, but he's just kind of just like jogging around the field all cool. But then when he's impacting, he's impacting. But he's such a weird, like, compared to the rest of the Hawks team, he has just a different vibe about him, doesn't he? A much different vibe, much more calm and relaxed, I would say. Wiz didn't have a very good game, and an old mate, Ginnivan, was pretty quiet too. So those 2 can definitely fire up in the future, I'm sure. They both had pretty quiet days. The Wiz seems to kind of just he needs to get that confidence up. They kept bringing that up during the game. Like, it's all about his confidence. Remind me, Jesse, take me back to 2024. Was that something he had an issue with last season as well?
some goal kicking yips more specifically,
Okay.
but he does strike me as a confidence player. But look, Dylan Moore hitting the scoreboard, I think well for Hawthorn too, which is a positive. They seem to have a really well organised side. Will Day coming back in off that ACL had a really good game as well,
He did.
which is a big positive for them. But this is where we talk about Sydney. And look, prima facie, 20-point loss against a side that is probably in and around that top 4 picture, not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But everything that we saw from Sydney, as soon as they got within a goal, is everything I have been saying during the off-season. And I think early on, and it is very early days, has really validated the concerns and the problems I have with this Sydney side.
Mhm.
Because from the position they were in, a goal game, at home, coming off humiliation in the grand final, with momentum, there is no reason you should be losing that game. You cannot lose that game of football if you are a serious contender in 2025. Everything was going Sydney's way. Hawthorn was struggling to keep up. This fit, vibrant Hawthorn side were gasping for air, trying to stop the likes of Blakey and Lloyd driving that ball forward. Chad Warner had an excellent game. Havoc in that Hawthorn backline. A Hawthorn backline that is still gelling, getting used to each other. Everything is going the way of Sydney at that point in time. And then they just get stuck in the mud. I don't know if they get in their own heads. Give Hawthorn credit. They got out of their rut and got going again. And Sydney didn't have an answer from that. And as soon as Hawthorn got the margin back out to 8-9 points, I didn't feel like the game was in any danger of swinging back Sydney's way. I was pretty confident at that point that Hawthorn are going to win this game of football. This is a real problem for Sydney because Dean Cox needs results early to justify, I think, a lot of the way that Sydney have tried to manage this list through the contending period into now. I think they're a real danger of collapsing this season. I'm not saying bottom 4. I did have them outside my 8, and I definitely stand by that of what we saw here. But I think it could get worse for Sydney as the weeks go on. They've got a tough draw to start the season. This has really put them on the back foot, and from the position they were in during the game, it's a big blow.
Yeah. I mean, it's well summed up, Jesse. It's my thoughts as well. I mean, I was quite surprised because I was watching on replay, so I got to fast forward through the halftime, three-quarter time breaks, which is fantastic. We love that. And when the fourth quarter started...
I love ads.
You love ads, do you?
Yeah, all of them. If you want to sponsor this podcast, DM us. Continue.
Yes, DM. It was pissing it down. It was raining very, very hard. And I was like, where'd this come from? That was probably the rain from up north that was supposed to hit up there, coming down to Sydney going, how's your father? But I was really impressed with the way Hawks kind of steadied that ship. You know, for a young team to be challenged by Sydney, as they tended to do last year as well, like they used to run over teams towards the tail end of games, for them to kind of batten down the hatches and just say, no, not today, almost like, not today, oldies. This is our game this time around. That's kind of how it felt. What do the Swans have up forward? Who are their main? You've got Papley. You've got who else?
Amadi.
Amadi was okay for a key forward.
Amadi kicked 3. I think realistically, in terms of output, if you're getting 3 goals out of your key forward, barring just 3 goals 9 or something absurd, you're getting probably really what you're hoping for.
Yeah. And look, and it's not to say that like they were terrible. Obviously, Blakey off the back was just amazing, as he always is. He's still hands down the weirdest looking football player, maybe in history, or at least since the 70s. But God, he can go, can't he? Goodness gracious me. He can absolutely go. And so it's not, I don't think it's panic stations yet for Sydney, but you're right. They do have a pretty tough start to the year. So they're good enough to find that next gear, I'm sure. Obviously some teething issues with Coxie coming in as well. So look, time will tell, and we'll see how we think they'll fare in Just the Tips, which you can find soon when we record it after this. Let's move on, Jesse, to the next game, unless there's anything else. 40,310 at the SCG. Your thoughts on the crowd?
Yeah, it's okay. I would have been a bit more lenient if it was a Thursday night game rather than a Friday night game. But if you're hitching the wagon to every game's going to sell out and there's going to be 93,000 people and you're getting 40, no.
Well, good segue. Speaking of massive crowds, let's move on to the second game of the round. Oh boy, this was a game. The Giants 15-14, 104, defeating the Collingwood Magpies 6-16, 52 in front of just over 19,000 people at NG Stadium. This game was fascinating to watch on a number of key levels. One, the Giants looked very good, and that's with a lot of key injuries as well, looked very good. Two, Collingwood do not look like they're ready for this season after that game. They were all cramping halfway through the third quarter, including Nick Dacos. They all looked tired. They all looked wrecked. They looked spent. Now, granted, this was allegedly, possibly, they wouldn't lie about this, the oldest list to ever run out for a round one game in history. What a stat.
Run out for a round one game.
Damn it, Jesse. Round zero game. Chalk it up. What's that now? What am I at?
85, something like that.
85. No, it's up to you to keep track, my man.
No, it's 11.
11? I think you've tacked someone. Anyway, we digress. Callahan. Finn Callahan. Talk about him, Jesse, because wasn't he just a gun?
Now, I'll be honest, when the news broke that St Kilda had offered Callahan $17 million over 10 years, I was a little bit taken aback in the context of that's a lot of money for someone who's a very good player at the time, but I probably didn't see him in the elite category. Wow, that was an elite game of football from Finn Callahan. He absolutely dominated the team that traded away the draft pick that he ended up becoming. He single-handedly from that midfield destroyed Collingwood inside and out. He can move, he can kick the ball, which is two things you'd hope for a footballer to do, but the way that he was doing it was superb. And really one of those performances that you think, if he can do this all season, or at least for a significant portion of the season, you're talking Charlie calculations. I mean, if anyone else is getting 3 votes out of this game, there's a serious issue with the voting system across the board. 100%. But you're also talking the type of player that can carry a team deep into September. That I'm not making the comparison yet, but you're talking that the level of quality of a Dustin Martin with Richmond during their dynasty era. You're talking about a Fife in 2015 for Fremantle, carrying them through that broken leg as well, and all the injuries throughout that period. You're talking about these players that can really stand head and shoulders above a very good team and say, this is my team.
Yeah. It was definitely that kind of performance. It was, and when we're talking about this game after the fact, and we're trying to come up with our 3 best players, we struggled to come up with 3 for the Giants. We've got Callahan, we've got Taylor Kelly there. Darcy Jones was the firecracker that he normally is. God, he's fun to watch. You know, what was that big fella's name up forward? He's got a really, it looks like he's going to be good. Wait a second. I'll find it, unless you can remember it. Max.
I'm going to let you squirm. I'll talk about some other players.
Gruzowski.
Yeah.
The Gronk.
There's a player in him.
Yeah, there is. Very much so. Very much so. I thought he looked very good up forward because he's a new kid, right? Coming off the, league, kicking his first goal. Love seeing a nice first goal and the celebration that comes after it. That said, Jesse, when we're trying to find our best for Collingwood, we struggled. We struggled.
I'll start, before we talk about the rest of Collingwood's performance, I'll start with a question to you. Nick Dacos, should he have kept playing?
No. And you know my feelings on this, because halfway through the third quarter when he started to really cramp up, he looked like he was in a lot of trouble. Now I get, playing through, for the team and all that kind of stuff, but it's round 0. It's opening round. You have a long season ahead. If you're keeping a player who's cramping halfway through the third quarter and was struggling to run for most of the rest of the game, out on the field, you sub off Will Hoskin-Elliott instead.
Who was admittedly quite terrible. I think that's worth qualifying.
Sure, but what's more important, a terrible Will Hoskin-Elliott or losing arguably your best player for an extended period of time because he tears something? It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
No.
It didn't make a lot of sense to me at all. So yes, I would have definitely have pulled Dacos off, wrapped him in cotton wool. They weren't exactly close already to winning this game. obviously the Giants piled on at the end because the Collingwood, the Pies could not go with them. They were dead. Their legs were cement. They couldn't go anywhere. It was a really, you got to worry for Collingwood if that's what they're going to dish up this year across the board.
I really agree, Liam. I think this was a really poor performance from Collingwood. And look, the footy media is doing a great job at sinking the boot in to Collingwood this week, as they were always going to do if they lost by 1 point or 100 points against GWS. But it's a problem. And early doors, this is not the performance that you need off the back of an underwhelming 2024. I hate to say it, Lachie Schultz is really struggling for form.
Yeah.
I thought Myercheck got a couple of goals, but he didn't really have any form of presence. I didn't feel in the game. Perryman got the footy, but his disposal efficiency was quite poor. Pendlebury used the ball quite well, but looked physically slow, which is the first time we can really say that about Pendlebury as well, because yes, we know his age. We know how long he's been around for, but he's never really shown that until this game, I felt. And that's a big problem at this stage of the season for the Pies.
But the thing is, though, that was pretty much the whole team. Like, none of them had any run. Like, for Sydney, at least, you had Blakey, who kept running the entire game. The Pies seem to have just all of them seem to be completely done, cooked.
And those handball chains too. When the Giants got going with those handball chains, it was almost like he's just clearing a path.
Tsunami. Just kept going. It's fantastic. But the player of the game definitely goes to Tim Membry, who tried to play on in the goal square and got tackled.
Look, he didn't have a great game, Membry, but I still think it's going to work out for Collingwood with Tim Membry.
I think so too. I think, look, it's game zero. So we can't put too much on this. However, geez Louise, that could be a problem. And Craig McRae's on the boundary line yelling at everybody, it seems.
Even me.
Even you, but that's not hard to do, Jesse. You're an antagonistic man at the footy. I've seen you. And
me?
hopefully, you know.
No.
And obviously hoping that Kieran Briggs is okay, because that was a nasty knock he copped. It didn't look good. So obviously, I don't know if there's any news out on him as yet and how his neck is faring, but fingers crossed he's okay, because that was a nasty one. Jesse?
Liam?
That's it.
Have we finished already?
I think we're finished already. It's going to be fun. We've got 9 games to go over. We're going to have to be snappy. We have to be snappy, but that's it.
Yes, brevity, a word always associated with this podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Make sure you are liking, sharing, subscribing, telling a friend, telling a neighbour, telling your colleagues at work. You know, we're all getting towards the end of financial year. We all need something to spend our end of financial year bonuses on. Tell them to go and... No. Just tell them to go and subscribe to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Go for it. Give us all the money in the world. Take out a loan and pay us money. Please don't do that. You can if you can repay it. Don't do it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's always a pleasure with you, Liam. Make sure you're tuning into Just the Tips as well, where the confidence points battle really starts to heat up with our first full round of footy.
That's right. See you later, everybody. Ciao for now.